For those who are in the Destiny world, Bungie veterans Luke Smith and Mark Noseworthy reportedly let go in recent layoffs. Luke Smith, this is like the man behind Destiny, right? In a newly surfaced report, Bungie has parted ways with two of its most notable veterans, Luke Smith and Mark Noseworthy, as part of a company-wide layoff that affected 17% of its staff on Wednesday. God bless, that's just so many people. Smith and Noseworthy, who
On air.
is actually alive. Okay, so we could tune into this afterwards. But related to Destiny 2 leaks, 2 DLCs, 2 seasons per. So this is another article. Here it is. Okay. Luke Smith and Mark Noseworthy are no longer at Bungie. Group said they were let go. They are no longer at Bungie. Payback is on the shelf, and this was supposedly going to be Destiny 3. Except, spoiler alert, it was never going to be Destiny 3 because apparently that was never a project in the works. Which, if you're in the Destiny world, let me know down below how that makes you feel. I'm kind of I agree with the side of Cross on this, where if they did do Destiny 3, unless it's just so much better than Destiny 2, you're gonna split the player base. Even if it's only, like 70-30, 70% of the new game, you're still missing 30% that are still in the old game, and now you have to fund Destiny 2 for 30% of a player base, and it's just going to cause a lot of money just being bled. So the strategy now is to let's take Destiny 2, and we're going to make smaller experience packs that are 6 months instead of the annual expansion packs that we've done before. So instead of annual releases, now we're looking at 6 months with 17% less staff and no leadership. Sounds like a recipe for success. There'll be smaller experience packs going forward. And the whole idea is, let's spend less to make less so that we can have Destiny 2 cost less. And then maybe make enough money to make more sense going forward. So this is right there. If Destiny 2 doesn't turn around or something doesn't drastically happen, it's sinking. The final shape may be the final shape. In the meantime, we're going to keep working on Marathon and Frontiers is the name for the current strategy shifting phase to a 2-year experience pack thing. That's really reassuring. We're shifting these to a 2-year experience pack thing. Solid. They're going to do Frontiers and they're going to do Marathon. And if they do both, if both things work out, then we'll revisit the future of Destiny. Will be at that point. So Destiny is basically on hold. Holy crap.
Yeah, that game was a bit of a bummer, and people had high hopes though, so I don't think you were wrong to think that, Jeff.
Damn. So earlier in the stream, we kind of broke down some senior management stepping down from Destiny, and I mean I kind of said that I agreed with Cross on this, and he uploaded a video while streaming, so I figured, hey, guess what? Let's add to this and get a full reaction piece out of this, because apparently Bungie's deep job cuts were in the works prior to Destiny's most recent release, sources say.
This is from Steven Totila. I'm saying that correctly. Bungie's deep job cuts were in the works prior to Destiny's most recent release, sources says. The acclaimed studio has been shredding jobs since Sony bought it. Employee are focused on Bungie leaders more than the bosses at PlayStation. A second round of deep job cuts at Destiny Studio Bungie's in less than a year sent shockwaves through the games industry on Wednesday. The cuts were not a sudden move. A sizable new round of layoffs had been planned by Bungie management for months before the launch of the studio's acclaimed Destiny 2 expansion, The Final Shape, this past June. 2 former Bungie employees told GameFile. Hold on. All right, hold on. What if The Final Shape would have blew every metric out of the water?
I thought that was the impression.
I don't know. But let's say something crazy. Let's say 1 million concurrent players on Steam alone. Then what? Now, the layoffs were announced publicly yesterday by Bungie CEO Pete Parsons, who said 220 workers would lose their jobs out of a workforce of about 1,300. Bungie is also working with a parent company, Sony, to integrate 155 of our roles into its PlayStation group. Sony Interactive Entertainment, Parsons said. Bungie will also spin out one of our incubation projects, an action game set in a brand new science fantasy universe, to form a new studio within PlayStation Studios to continue its promising development, he said. Sony purchased Bungie in 2022 for $3.6 billion, at least partially due to its development and management of Destiny 2, the sci-fi first-person shooter that launched in 2017 and had entrenched itself as a beloved free-to-play, massively multiplayer, continuously updated live service adventure. But Bungie's leaders had overstated their studio's financial prospects to Sony, and Wednesday's cuts were needed to stop continued losses that amounted to an ongoing reality check, 3 ex-Bungie sources told GameFile. I think Sony overpaid for Bungie, one of the former insiders said, on condition of anonymity to avoid damaging their career. I think Bungie sold things they were just not able to deliver. Two of the ex-Bungie workers said the studio repeatedly missed financial targets promised to Sony and had been losing money since the release of February 2023's Destiny 2's expansion Lightfall. Since February? It was what? Lightfall struggles along with the decay of the aging Destiny 2 player base and repeated delays to the company's next big game, Marathon, led managers to do a dire conclusion last year. Bungie, the studio initially granted continued autonomy when it was purchased, would need to make deep cuts to show Sony executives that it was taking its finances seriously, the two sources said. Oh, God. Last October, Bungie laid off around 100 workers, but employees sensed that might not be the end. In March, IGN reported that Bungie developers fear more cuts would follow the June 2024 release on Destiny 2 expansion, The Final Shape. That was the rumor. The rumor was Final Shape was going to come out and there were going to be cuts. I assumed that Final Shape did well, there wouldn't be cuts. And those cuts in 2023 were indeed understood internally to be insufficient. Two of the ex-Bungie sources told GameFile, at least by early 2024. As a result, Bungie's leadership planned another round. Those cuts couldn't be avoided even if for Destiny 2's 2024 expansion, The Final Shape had a blockbuster performance, three sources said. Let me read that one more time. Those cuts could not be avoided even if for Destiny 2's 2024 expansion, The Final Shape
like, no
had
matter
a
what,
blockbuster
you guys are
performance,
fucked.
three sources said. That's what we were wondering earlier. What we were wondering is if the Final Shape had just blown it out of the water, could they have avoided it? Jesus, man. I don't understand how you can avoid that. All right, reach for comments about detailed reporting the story. A Bungie rep referred GameFile to Sony Public Relations. Sony PR did not reply to a subsequent inquiry. Now, I at Bungie's leaders. On Tuesday, current and former Bungie workers lit into Parsons and Bungie management, questioning the leadership that had steered the studio into successive traumatic layoff cycles. Step down, Pete, former Destiny community manager Liana Rupert wrote on Twitter X. Inexcusable. Bungie community manager Dylan Gaffner wrote on Twitter X, who, by the way, still works at Bungie. Industry-leading talent being lost yet again, accountability falling upon the workers who have pushed the needle to deliver for our community time and time again. Now, Gaffner's social media feed is full of laid-off workers from Bungie's player support, narrative, sound teams, and more, reeling from the shock and looking for work. On Tuesday, Parsons himself described a studio that was overextended by chasing the goal of running 3 concurrent major franchises and greenlighting an array of incubation projects over the last 5 years. Dude, I mean, look, man. I remember seeing it, all the hiring spree that Bungie was doing, and what was so crazy was so many hirings were occurring that had nothing to do with Destiny. And then we saw this project, and that project, and that, you know what I mean? It was like, good God. And there's no way they could have pushed all those out. I don't know what they were thinking. Now, by 2023, an economic slowdown made the situation worse, Parsons said. We were overly ambitious, our financial safety margins were subsequently exceeded, and we began running in the red, he said. Even with the exhaustive efforts undertaken across our leadership and product teams to resolve our financial challenges, these steps were simply not enough. A critique of how Bungie management spent the studio's money popped up unexpectedly last year via a trial exhibit from a lawsuit over Microsoft's bid for Activision. An internal 2021 Xbox document analyzed potential acquisition targets, including Bungie, which Microsoft had owned from 2000 to 2007. One of the listed risks, company is known for its high burn rate. I remember us reading that. That was they got a high burn rate, but like somehow they haven't gone under. Now Sony weighs in. Tension between Bungie and parent Sony did not take long to come into view. In February, less than 2 years since Sony had announced its plan to buy Bungie, the company's longtime chief financial officer, Hiroki Totiki, said Bungie had room for improvement from a business perspective with regard to areas such as the use of business expenses and assuming accountability for development timelines. Seeing that, yeah, accountability for development timelines. So again, in their eyes, Final Shape probably should not have been pushed back to June, and Marathon should have been coming out this year, on top of whatever other games they were working on. Notably, an initial live translation of Totiki's answer didn't name Bungie and seemingly referred to PlayStation's portfolio of studios, but Sony made a point to clarify. Later, Totaki was indeed talking about the studio. Wow. Also notable, Totaki had recently added chairman of PlayStation to his duties. That's wild. So in the initial live translation, his answer didn't clarify Bungie, but just to follow up, he made it clear that he was in fact talking about Bungie. In May, Sony investors questioned Totaki about when the company would reach break even on Bungie. The company is not really expecting any profit contribution from it this year, Totaki said. PlayStation profits are nevertheless top of mind at Sony these days. The headcount of its gaming group swelled in recent years as it went on an acquisition binge, but gaming profit had waned until a recent sign of recovery, as GameFile noted in February. Sony said it had 12,700 workers in its game and network services division, inclusive of PlayStation, as at the end of March 2023, the most recent figure available. That was up from 10,200 at the end of March 2022. The overall headcount for all of Sony had been declining every year since 2009, aside from the bump in 2017. It finally grew again in 2022 and 2023. When it did, more than half of the added workers were in its gaming division. But Sony's game group has been reporting slimmer profits even as it takes in more money. A chart from Sony's 2023 corporate report shows the games division's revenue soaring, but Sony's music division started to make bigger profits. In this past spring, Sony elevated 2 PlayStation veterans to co-CEO roles under Tataki. In a note marking their new positions, the co-CEOs wrote, "Expectations for us are high, and we aim to drive improving profitability." That's the name of the game right now, then. Now, the alternate history is worse. Publicly among 4 ex-Bungie sources GameFile spoke with, there was little animosity for Sony over the cuts. The blame falling to Bungie management for promising
that project in
Destiny is a live service game. It makes money when players who sample it for free decide to spend money on optional cosmetic items for their character and for new adventures offered via expansions such as Lightfall and the Final Shape. It is interesting here too, man, because I would say years ago, that animosity was toward Activision. Anytime when something negative popped up, the company would rally in a way. And you saw it happen after Forsaken. They rallied and pretty much put the middle finger up to Activision. But here, they're not getting that. They're blaming Bungie. What did Activision say about Forsaken? I'm pretty sure they just said it was disappointing. Big game publishers and studios hope that a live service game with a dedicated user base will provide regular revenue for years. The pitfall is that players' enthusiasm to play any live service can wane, a problem exacerbated when players move on to other newer and or more popular games. Destiny 2 has become one of those and was slipping. Bungie's next game, Marathon Like Destiny, is also designed to be a live service game. Sony touted its Bungie acquisition as a means to gain profitable live service gaming expertise. It planned for Bungie to spread its knowledge to other PlayStation teams while running as a quasi-independent shop. Multiple Sony executives sit on Bungie's board. Well, look at there. Multiple Sony executives sit on Bungie's board, as reported by IGN in December. But Bungie leaders have held a majority. Sony nevertheless has leverage over Bungie managers to perform lest they lose their jobs, 2 sources noted. For all the stresses of the Sony deal on Bungie, one well-connected former worker at the studio told GameFile, the alternate history where Sony doesn't buy Bungie is worse. The alternate history is insolvency. This is what we were told before. We were told that Bungie essentially took the deal with Sony because they were treading water. But here's the thing, man. If you don't address how you got insolvent in the first place, or damn near it, somebody is spending too much dough, too much money. Somebody going way too crazy. Look, I know everybody is jumping on Pete, and I'm not saying you shouldn't, but it's not Pete in his cars. They're spending it somewhere, though. But it wasn't the core. 2.3 million on 3.6 billion. Now, who knows what the payout was, though? That's true. Who knows what the payout is? I mean, dude, the only thing that makes sense is they took the $3.6 billion, they put it in Doge when it was at 72 cents, and then things went south really fast, man. But, you know, they bought into it. They bought it at the high. How did that money disappear? What happened? What happened? That's a lot of money. You could have literally just put, you could have put that money, I don't know, you could have bought treasury bills or some shit. I don't know how much they need liquid on them at all times. I'm gonna just say this. I wouldn't be surprised if something comes out in the next year or so and we find out some crazy stuff, like something crazy happened to that money. I mean, this just sounds like, who was the guy back in 07? Bernie Madoff? It's some Madoff shit. I'm just saying. I mean, that money of that amount,
3.6 billion is a lot.
Sony's got to have their own, like someone's got to be auditing. They did build a brand new huge office building in downtown Bellevue, and those things cost hundreds of millions of facilities, cost permits. The area is money. Yeah, I know the facility you're talking about. First up, it's leased. Second, that was done before, that lease was locked in before COVID, talking like 2019 when they locked into that lease. How much money that is? Not enough to deplete $3.6 billion. A top-heavy team. Layoffs have been ripping through the games industry for 2 years, costing over 20,000 workers their jobs since the start of 2023. As tracked by game developer Foreign Nor, pundits, executives, developers, and more have been blamed a come down from the pandemic-driven boom of 2020. When much of the world's population was locked indoors and needed entertainment. A pattern has emerged of gaming giants that added hundreds or thousands of workers in recent years, now cutting a large chunk of those roles. That's been the case at Sony, as well as Activision, 9,800 workers in 2021 versus 13,000 in 2022. Riot, where co-CEO Mark Merrill said a January layoff of 11% of his workforce followed a period where headcount doubled and more. A variation of those headcount expansion challenges set in at Bungie, which have become top-heavy with managers, according to 3 former members of the studio. On the one hand, it's an interesting byproduct of people loving Bungie, one source said. People stuck around at the company rather than splitting for another studio. On the other, we needed more people to do the actual work. Yeah, I would think. I think this part right here is probably the most important. Result has been the de facto demotion of some senior members of the studio, down to more hands-on roles in the company's games. A move that has also shaken up teams and left some developers at Bungie feeling squeezed. Yeah, it's
squeezed and unmotivated,
weird,
I'm sure.
So there were demotions of senior members at the studio, and I bet a lot of these there was a lot of people that got moved up to those roles, those lead roles and stuff like that. And what happened is their team probably got cut or eventually let go, or they were put on an incubation project that obviously nothing came out of it. Probably took the demotion to keep their jobs too. Yeah. Now Destiny isn't enough. For more than 200 Bungie workers, the priority now is how to find work in a rough market. The day of the layoffs, there were at least glimmers of hope as developers from EA, Microsoft's 343 Industries, and others said they had some open roles. For the rest of the workers at Bungie, the challenge would be whether the studio can turn itself around. More than 850 people will remain working on Destiny and Marathon, Parsons said. At the moment, only Destiny 2 is making the studio any money. The game's June expansion to the final shape was critically acclaimed and held as a high point in the decade-long Destiny saga, and yet it sold less than Lightfall, one of the former Bungie sources told GameFile, comparing the two expansion launch sales. Even the rosiest sales for the final shape probably couldn't have single-handedly turned things around. The financials just don't work, they said. Destiny is an incredibly expensive game to make. Then how do you make it for 10 years? I don't understand. If Destiny is an incredibly expensive game to make, how has it been made for 10 years?
How has it gotten the love and
like probably got more expensive as it became more top heavy. Okay, that's a good point. So what you're saying is, as those ground developers and the studio continued to grow, everyone moved up to managerial roles. On top of that, you know, salaries also went up with that. Yeah, I got you. Again, though, things still don't add up. Right down here, this final line here, right?
I mean, that starts to add up real quick. 3.6 billion with all those added like payroll and whatnot. Like,
how much of that is Destiny being expensive to make, or the other 4 or 5 games you forgot over there in incubation? You take sandbox developers and other developers off of Destiny to go make a game that you didn't even put out the door. What is those losses? Are they just falling under Destiny, that umbrella, and you're just saying, look at Destiny losing all this money? I don't think anyone in their mind, I mean, like, other than Sony, obviously, would think that, hey, we're going to take one game and use this one game's revenue to essentially finance 3 to 4 other games. I mean, in my opinion, Marathon, okay, then let's do what they're doing right now. Consolidate and just have, but beforehand, consolidate and just have everyone work on Destiny and Marathon. No, dude, guys, I'm going to ride this ship all the way down, man. What are you talking about? We're not going... You know, I already told you, I will log in on my Titan. Forgive me, I'm on my hunter right now. Bungie's going to be like, we're closing the servers today. We will log in. I will keep a macro on forever, and we will stay logged in post-death, I might add. I knew back in 2020 when we heard about all the incubation projects and people moving away from D2 didn't sound great. Look, I'm telling you, we honestly, we may end up doing a fully edited video of how everything happened. It wasn't just the incubation projects that Bungie was naming. It was the crazy hiring sprees that they were doing. It was all the positions changing. Suddenly, everyone that was at Bungie were moved to different roles, different positions, and all of it were promotion. It was like promotion, hiring spree. Yeah, I agree with the statement right there. You had all these promotions, and then no one was actually working on the games. Here's what I'm wondering. How many people got let go that actually worked on the game versus the people in these managerial roles? And the other side of things is, I don't entirely blame the people that got promotions. You do a good job at a company, you eventually get promoted. That's what you're supposed to do, right? No one told Bungie, though, to blow things up as if we were going to be in lockdown during COVID for the next decade. Maybe that was projected. Maybe during that moment, they were like, hey, we're about to be in lockdown. This is our life for the next 10 years. We've got COVID. Everybody's going to be indoors. They need video games.
But this is why you don't make a knee-jerk reaction.
Regardless, this is a great article here by
Steven.
Steven.
You can't make a knee-jerk reaction where you're going to make a 10-year plan over a pandemic like that, because we never know when that shit's going to end.
Just to let you know, we'll continue to check out his work and Jason's work and see what comes from that.
Slap that like button.